Hi everyone, it's Miss Terry, and I'm here to talk about this month's picks for students in grades 5th through 6th. We'll go through some fiction books, and then we'll go through some graphic novels, and then I have a few nonfiction books for you. So let's get started. This first one is called Ground Zero by Alan Gratz, and he always really writes these really you're never really sure how the book is going to end. And this one is a September 11th, 2001 novel, but it also has another storyline that takes place September 11th, 2019. So it's kind of looking at two different characters. The first is Brandon, and he is back in 2001. He actually was suspended from school for getting into a fight, so he ends up going to work with his dad, and his dad works in the two towers, and he ends up being in the North Tower when it is hit by the airplane, and he is trying to help others get out, as well as being helped himself in order to survive that ordeal. And then we also are looking at the story of a girl named Rashima, and she's in 2019. She lives in Afghanistan, and war is certainly not a stranger to her. She's constantly in danger. And she ends up helping a wounded American soldier, even though her country really is at war with the Americans. So this is a story of how these events affect these young people and how they learn to deal with them. So that is called Ground Zero. This is definitely an action-packed novel. If you close your eyes, you might miss something. So really pay close attention as you read, and it certainly is a page turner. So it's Ground Zero. This next one is also a survival story. This one is a part of the Girl Survive story, especially if you like books like the I Survived series, you might enjoy this one. This one is Maribel versus the Volcano. It takes place in 1980 in Washington when Mount St. Helens was threatening to erupt. They actually ended up evacuating Maribel's town, but she kind of was like, oh, it's not going to be that big of a deal, and she decides to go back to ignore the evacuation and go back to her house so she can collect a few of the items that her and her sister have forgotten. And then the volcano actually does erupt, and Maribel realizes she's going to have to stay strong if she's going to survive this ordeal. So that's Maribel versus the Volcano. The Retake by Jen Kalanita is a story about a girl named Zoe, and Zoe has been best friends with Laura for a very long time, but lately things have not been going well at all, and she really wishes things could go back to the way that they used to be. She wants her and Laura to be just as close as they've always been. Well, an app ends up downloading onto her phone, and she realizes this app allows her to go back in time to fix some of the mistakes, or to kind of figure out when things started to drift apart, to see if she can change things so that things can get better in the future. So how would you feel about being able to go back in time to change some of your decisions? So this one's called The Retake. I have two choose your own adventures. The first one is called Could You Be a Big Mountain Skier? And then the other is Can You Protect the Coral Reef? So these are two new choose your own adventures. The Coral Reef has 25 choices and 14 different endings, and the Big Mountain Skier has 34 choices and 18 endings. And both have real world examples of things that you might actually be able to do. And the Big Mountain Skier also has an opportunity, if you'd like, you could become a helicopter skier, which means they basically bring you to the top of a very large mountain on a helicopter, and then you jump out of the helicopter in order to go skiing. And do you have what it takes to do that? And then in Protect the Coral Reefs, you have the option of several different reefs to help save, and it gives you some ideas of what you can actually do in real life. This next one is called Amari and the Night Brothers, and this is about a girl named Amari who believes that her brother Quentin is alive, even though nobody else seems to, but things are not going so great in Amari's world. She's actually just been expelled from school. But she receives this note that asks her to go to a summer camp at a place called the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And here she discovers that magic is real, and she believes that this is what has happened to her brother, and she's determined to find out. She does make a new best friend named Elsie, and Elsie actually turns out to be a dragon who is not quite shifted yet. So she's a shape changer that will turn into a dragon. And Amari and Elsie have decided that they're going to go into the world of magic to see if they can find her brother. If you like Percy Jackson, you're definitely gonna enjoy this story, or Harry Potter. This is a good read alike for those. You'll be very sad when the book is over. Luckily, it looks like this is going to be the beginning of a series. What happens next is a story about Abby, and she actually lives in Moose Junction, Wisconsin, and she lives there with her family and her sister. And her sister was supposed to be going to ballet school, a very prestigious ballet school, when she ends up being diagnosed with anorexia. And this kind of throws her whole family into this really just, they don't really know what to do and how to react. And Blair ends up, Abby's sister Blair ends up going into a recovery center. And so while she is away, Abby and her family are trying to figure out what to do next. Well, they end up renting one of their cabins to an astronomer who is looking for a special telescope that will allow him to see the upcoming solar eclipse better. And he kind of recruits Abby into helping him. Now, one of the interesting things about the story is that Abby is an unreliable narrator. Right in the beginning, she tells you right up front that she is a liar. And so you're not 100% sure which parts of the story you need to believe, and you'll have to kind of put those pieces together to see where this novel leads and what happens next. I do have the Derby Daredevils. There's actually 2 now out in this series, so I'm going to talk about the first one, but just so you know that the second one is now available. This one is called Kenzie Kickstarts a Team, and Kenzie and her friend Shelly are really into roller derby, and they'd like to make sure that they're on the same team in the Derby League. So in order to do that, they need to form their own team so that they can make sure that they get to stay together. So they have to find 5 other girls to form this team, and they are not sure where they're going to find these girls. Now, they pick up three players right away, but none of them are really that good at skating. And so they're just trying to figure out how they're going to be a team and actually become a part of the league when they have kind of like a group of misfits that are going together. And then Shelly ends up inviting Kenzie's next door neighbor, Bree, who's actually a fantastic skater and actually is Kenzie's secret crush as well. And now Kenzie's a little bit worried about how that is going to go. So that is the first in the series, and the second one is called Shelly Struggles to Shine. And whereas this one focuses more on Kenzie, this second one focuses more on Shelly and how she finds her place on the team. Okay. This next one is called The Sisters Grimm. This is actually not a new book, but it's got a beautiful new cover. So I thought I'd bring it back out because you might have missed it because you were younger when it first came out. But this is called The Sisters Grimm, The Fairy Tale Detectives. It is the first in a series, and this is about 2 orphans, Sabrina and Daphne, who get pulled out of foster care by this old woman who claims to be their grandmother. They have never heard of her, and she ends up taking them to a place called Fairyport Landing, New York, where they discover that they are ancestors of the brothers Grimm, who wrote all of the fairy tales. Well, it turns out these fairy tales are real, and the characters in them are also real, and they're all kind of combined to Fairyport Landing. However, there is a contingency of kind of like the bad characters, like the big bad wolf and other characters like that, who are trying to break out of the curse that has landed them, or maybe protected them from the rest of the world in Fairyport Landing. And it ends up being Sabrina and Daphne who are going to help make sure that all of those characters stay right where they need to be. Again, this is the first in the series. If you love fractured fairy tales, you definitely are going to enjoy the Sisters Grimm. Maya and the Rising Dark is a story about a girl named Maya whose papa comes home and likes to tell her scary stories about the creatures from West African mythology. And it turns out that papa is not really telling her stories, that there's a lot of truth to them. And it turns out he is I'm hopefully gonna say this right, an Elgwa, which is the guardian of the veil, which is kind of this veil that protects Maya's world from the dark, where some really evil beings live. And the Lord of Shadows is trying to take revenge on Elgwa, on Maya's papa, for some of the creatures that were killed by the veil. And now Maya and her friends have decided to go into the veil to save her papa from this evil man, and to make sure that the veil doesn't fall so that the dark cannot come into our world. This also is the beginning of a series. And then the last fiction I have for you is another one in the horror genre. This one is another K.R. Alexander. I've shown you quite a few of his books, Scare Me, Haunt Me. Well, this one is called Follow Me. And this one is about a boy named Tamal, whose parents have just bought a new house. And it turns out that it actually has a very deadly history, and everybody kind of avoids this house. They don't want any, it's one of those houses where you're like, kids don't go near there. And it turns out that there is a ghost of a girl who lives in there. And Tamal is determined to find out what exactly happened to her and whether or not he can keep the house from destroying him and his family. This is definitely a step up from Goosebumps. I've told you this before about K.R. Alexander. He's a little bit on the creepy side, so you might want to read this one with the lights on. Now let's talk about some of the graphic novels. This first one is called We Found a Monster, and this is about a boy named Casey, and Casey has a secret. He has a lot of monsters. They have a tendency to come and find him, and they are constantly needing help, or they're wounded, and he's exhausted. He's not getting any sleep, and he's not really sure what to do when a new girl at school named Xandra tells him that she also has a monster that needs some help, and the two of them are going to work together to see what they can do for the monsters. Again, this is written in graphic novel format. The Deep, Dark, and Blue is a story about twins, Hawk and Grayson, who have been noblemen, which means, you know, that they have a lot of money and they're kind of important, but then their cousin decides that he wants all of that money and that prestige and kind of throws this coup where Hawk and Grayson are on a run for their lives, and they end up going into something called the Communion of Blue, which is kind of this temple for girls. So they disguise themselves as girls in order to evade capture by their evil cousin. And while Hawk really wants revenge, Grayson really kind of settles into the role and discovers that he actually doesn't mind dressing as a girl, and he feels more comfortable in that skin. And this is about the two of them trying to reclaim who they are and really discovering who they are and who they are meant to be. So that's a Deep, Dark, and Blue. A lot of mystery and intrigue in the story as well. Super Sidekicks, No Adults Allowed, is a story about JJ, or which is short for Junior Justice. He is a sidekick to a superhero, and he feels that he's kind of gotten a raw deal, that it's not that great being a sidekick. He helps his superhero mentor do all these great things, but then he never gets any of the credit, and he actually gets a lot of the grunt work with cleaning up and walking the super pets and things like that. And he and his friends and other sidekicks decide that they're going to form their own super group, and they're going to protect their new friend Goo, who actually is an evil sidekick to Dr. Enoch. But when Dr. Enoch catches up with them, they realize that they're going to have to be more than just sidekicks in order to save their friend. Definitely on the funny side. But if you like superhero stories, you probably will enjoy it. Yuzu the Pet Vet is actually written in the manga style, so it's written backwards, but it's a new story. It's called Yuzu the Pet Vet, and Yuzu's mom has gotten ill, so she sends Yuzu to go live with her uncle Akihito, who happens to be a veterinarian, and so she ends up starting to help out at the animal hospital, as she's also struggling to deal with her mother's illness and who she wants to be. And at first she's very nervous about the pets. She's not really sure that she's going to be very helpful, but then discovers her true passion is going to be helping animals. So this is the first in the series, and there's a couple already out and at the library. This next one is another part of the middle school misadventures. You may have seen the first one in this series. This one is called Operation Hat Heist, and in this story, Newell, his favorite show is called The Captain, and when he discovers that the main character is actually coming to the Comic-Con near his house, he decides that he wants to go meet him very badly. So he takes his official captain hat and brings it to school one day in order to go right after school so that he can meet the captain. Well, one of the bullies at school steals the hat, and before he can get it back, the principal takes it and says, "Remember, there's no hats allowed at school." And Newell he and his friends decide that they're going to have to get that hat back in order for him to meet his famous celebrity. This next one is called Glitch, and this is about a girl named Izzy who discovers that she can go inside her favorite video game, where she meets a robot named Ray who tells her that she's going to be responsible for saving Dungeon City from the big boss. Now, this is all well and good, but Izzy also has to navigate the real world, not just her video game, and her best friend Eric is kind of getting annoyed with her for all the secrets that she's been keeping, and she's trying to figure out how is she going to save one planet while still saving her friendship. So it's called Glitch. And then the last graphic novel I have, this one is called Forever Home, and this is about a girl named Willow whose family is in the military, so every 2 years they pretty much pick up and move and go somewhere else. Well, they've just bought a new house called Hadley House, and Willow's really excited. She thinks this is going to be the first time she's going to be able to put down some roots. Well, it turns out that Hadley House is haunted, and it is full of ghost characters, and Hadley has decided it doesn't matter. Willow has decided it doesn't matter. Her and her family are staying at Hadley House, and she's going to make these ghosts become a part of her family. A little bit on the scary side, but also kind of fun. So that's called Forever Home. All right, let's talk about some nonfiction. This first one is called Fighting Game Esports, and this one focuses specifically on Super Smash Brothers and Street Fighter. And it talks about the professional esports around those two games and what it takes to become a player, what kind of money is involved, and some other aspects of the fighting games that are available on esports. Pounce is a new one by National Geographic Kids, and this is a training guide for your cat. That's right, for your cat, how to teach your cat to do some tricks. It has really great step-by-step instructions, and it really gives you the how-to on how to teach your cat to do things like to go through a tunnel, to jump over distances, but it just really starts with the basic training and moves up from there. So even like how to get your cat to come when you call, which I kind of am a little bit skeptical. I've had cats before. They don't really like to do what you tell them to do, but this book will teach you how to teach them some tricks. This next one is called Escape at 10,000 Feet. It is a part of the Unsolved Case Files series, and this is about a man who hijacked Northwest Airlines Flight 305 on November 24th, 1971, and it remains the only unsolved airplane hijacking in history. So if you'd like to find out more about this criminal and what he did and how he possibly escaped, this will talk about the events leading up to the hijacking, what he did during the hijacking, and then what they suspect happened after. So if you kind of like those unsolved mystery type books, you will enjoy this one. And it's nonfiction, but it's written in a very graphic way, which is makes it kind of a quick read. This next one is on the spooky side. This is called Near-Death Experiences and Reincarnation. Reincarnation means that some people believe that when you die, you come back as another person. So it's going to look at reincarnation throughout history and what people have believed. And then it's also going to talk about people's near-death experiences and what they say happened when they almost died. I have two different kind of crafty type books. This one is called Crafting Calm, Art and Activities for Mindful Kids. So in addition to some great activities that you can create, it also talks a lot about how to find your calm and how to relieve some of your anxiety and to relax and go to a mindful place in order to be your best self. And then this next one is called Cardboard Box Engineering. And these are all different things that you can make out of a cardboard box. And one of the things I really like about this book is it has the blueprints, and then it has really fantastic step-by-step instructions, where even if you don't think you're that great at building things, if you pay close attention, you should be able to follow these instructions. And they're all pictures and words, so you just don't have to guess. It'll really tell you what you need to do to make the things in this book. And it goes from pretty easy things to a little bit harder. This next one is called The Museum of Phobias, the Harrowing Human Gallery. And phobias are things that we're afraid of. So each section of this book talks about a different phobia. And then it talks about some of the people that have this phobia, what it's kind of caused them to do, maybe some ways to get over it, and how to even know if you even have that as a phobia. And then the last nonfiction one I have for you today is called Armor and Animals. And this looks at how human beings have created armor that kind of mimics the animal world. So it looks at a knight in his suit of armor and talks about the different pieces that it involves, and then compares it to the animal world so you can see how the two things go. For example, how is a lobster and a suit of armor, what do they have in common? Okay, so that's armor and animals. Hope you find something that you enjoy.